My dudes, what's happening, man? This is Trent. As you know, I've been a concept artist working in video games for almost 20 years now. The majority of concept artists working in the video game industry use Photoshop. This is a software that you will need to know how to use if you want to be a concept artist working in the video game industry. Now, yes, it's true. A lot of different artists, if you're Instagram artist, you're an illustrator, or do other jobs, you can use those other softwares such as Procreate on iPad or Sketchbook Pro or Krita. There are a lot of other digital drawing tools to use, software to use. But we're going to be doing Photoshop because that is what a pro concept artist is going to be using when you go and actually get a job at a game studio. And this is going to be for beginners, but it's also going to maybe open up your eyes to some techniques and tools that you might not be aware of. All right, so enough of the intro. This is going to be a pretty meaty video. It's going to be pretty long. So, hopefully you can go along with me and I'll show you what all these icons and buttons do and the basics of drawing using Photoshop. Now, first and foremost, you're going to be like, yo, can I just be a concept artist with a mouse? Can I draw on paper? No, you got to draw with a Wacom tablet or an XP pen. You need some kind of input device that has a pressure sensitivity to it. Watch some of my reviews if you want to pick up a really good one. I recommend the Wacom 16 for a good starter. It's a few $100 though. All right. Now, here we are in Photoshop. This is the 2021 version. So you're going to notice this slick gunmetal dark interface here. And the first thing that you're going to want to do is go to File, New. You could also hit Command N, as in Nancy. And here we go. We're going to set this resolution to 300. And let's, you know what? What you could do here is just pick one of these preset. A lot of times you'll find these preset ones, there's like for print or art and illustration. You might want to just go with something like this. One thing you'll notice is that they're all set to 300 DPI. It says PPI. It's the same, dots per inch or points per inch, which are just pixels per inch, basically. So what you could do is just, click on that right there. That's going to give you 1,000 width by 1,000 height, and that's fine. But usually I like to go a little bit longer, like wider. So I'll do like a 3,000 across by like a 1,500 tall. And it's okay if this is set to, RGB. You don't need to change this, just square pixels is fine. All these other settings are really unnecessary. These are the important ones, which are really just your pixel dimensions and your resolution. Don't go lower than 300 resolution though, pixels per inch, because if you want it to be something that can print or just look nice, that's going to do it. If you don't like what you've done, you could go over here to this icon right here. This is the cropping tool. And you could say, well, I want it to be a little bit, more in like that, Or you could go up here to image and go to canvas size. And this allows you to make some adjustments to your canvas. If you wanted to change the size of it, like go, maybe you wanted to do like 8.5 by 11. Let's do 11 wide by 8.5 tall. So that's like a, like something that you would get, on a note paper or something like that. Now, obviously, we've got all this. Now I have these colors here set to this. So it fills in the new area with this dark blue. But like, let's say we just want that to be a completely white canvas. Well, what you can do is you can hit Command A, which would select everything. You see these little ants, that means that's selected. But another way to do that is to just click on this a little button up here in the corner, and then that allows you to make a selection. And then once it's selected, you could fill that in using the edit and then fill, which allows you to just fill it in with whatever color you have selected. Or I'm going to show you how to change colors here. If you click on this little color button here, yours might already be white or black. And then what you could do, the top one is the one that you have selected. So I'm going to set that to white. And then I'm going to go up here to edit and fill with the foreground color. If you choose the background color, that's related to the second color here. And that's like basically your eraser color. Okay, so that's fine and dandy. We're all set up. Let's get to drawing here. So the first thing you want to do is click on this button right here. This is for the brush. And the brush tool allows you to draw. Now, if you've got a white canvas and you've got this set to white and you try to draw, you won't see anything because you're drawing with white. But let's say that we change that color. Click on the color icon and then select a new color. And then we make marks. Whoa, okay, now we're cooking. Now we're cooking with something here. Now, obviously, just like any program, Command Z is going to undo what you just did. So I'm going to hit Command Z. If you're on Windows, it'll be Control. Whenever I say Command, it's going to be Control, okay? So Command Z undoes everything, and Shift Command Z redoes it. This also walks you through your history here. So the history here allows you to do and then undo and then redo all of your actions, every brush stroke. So like, let's say that I do a bunch of strokes. Let's say I just did like, 50 different strokes. And this is kind of neat to watch, by the way. Watch. Okay, so let's go up our history. You can see here how you can hit Control Z, or you can actually click on where you want throughout your history to go backwards, or by, again, holding Shift, going forwards through your history. So this allows you to make a few mistakes and you can easily clean them up. But again, I'm going to fill that in the same way that we had filled it in before. And I'm going to say go up here to edit and then fill. Let's do the background color because it's white. Okay. Now brushes. The thing you have to understand about brushes, if you right click, you pull up all of your brush shapes. Now think of this like you've got a brush, let's say that you've got like a stick and you want to choose which kind of a stamper, which kind of a shape you want to imprint onto the paper. These brushes, now these are my custom brushes, and different brushes are going to have different properties. So some of them are going to look really like grainy and noisy, and some of them are going to have different kinds of pressure sensitivities set to size. Like this one, for instance, if we barely press, we get like a very small line. If we press really hard, we get a very thick line. And this is the value of having a pen input device, okay, is that we get this broad range. Now, some of our other brushes are set to opacity. So if we barely press, it barely leaves any kind of an imprint. But if we press really hard, you can see the opacity. It's very opaque. It's very solid color. There's a few quick keys that you're going to need to know if you're using brushes. So, and if you want to increase the size of your brush, you use the right bracket. To decrease the size of your brush, you want to use the left bracket. And then, of course, if you'll notice that you can increase the size. This really comes in handy if you're trying to get a broad range out of your brush. If you're doing a very large painting, for instance, you don't want to do the whole thing with a tiny, tiny, tiny little brush. You want to have a good range there. The other quick key that you're going to need is the Option key. This is also the Alt key on Windows. And you'll notice how it changes the icon into this little eyedropper here, which allows you to color dab. You can color dab blended colors and mixed colors. This is an effective tool if you're just getting comfortable with blending and creating gradients and shading. Because you can kind of color dab, you can blend two colors together and then color dab that gray, and then now you have that new gray, and then you can color dab the blend of that, especially if you're using a brush that only has like a 50% opacity. For most artists, they're kind of hovering their left hand over the Option key at all times. So I wanted to show you how the icon looks different when you change brush sizes and use the Option key, but my capture software doesn't capture the brush size or shape anymore. So for the rest of this video, it's just going to look like a more normal mouse icon. I know, even in the future, nothing works, right? So let's say that you don't want to color dab. Let's say you want to pick a specific color. Well, you'd click on this icon down here. This is your primary color. That's whatever color you have selected. But you can quickly begin to see how you could blend colors doing this by, for instance, color dabbing and then using light pressure over another color. And your colors begin to blend. Color dabbing in between. And this is one way that some painters will blend their colors. This is kind of like having a little mixer board if you're used to traditional paint, having a little mixer board and then being able, it's a beautiful thing though, because in real life you can't color dab. You have to mix those colors again to get the ones that you want. But with digital, you can just lay them down and then blend them later. There you go. So we get this nice gradation, right? And this will be nice for us to practice with as well, because another tool that I use is the eraser tool. Now, when you're in Photoshop, if you just flip over the pen, a lot of times like a Wacom pen will have an eraser. And all it does really is take this secondary color and uses that. But if you were on a new layer, for instance, it would erase or completely make transparent that layer below. Now, what am I talking about when I'm talking about layers? This is going to be an essential thing that you're going to need to know about if you're doing things with Photoshop. Well, first of all, we need to understand the layer stack. Now, think of this like a series of transparencies. We're going to create a new layer here, which you can also do with quick keys by hitting Shift, Command N, as in Nancy, and that creates a new layer. That layer is set to normal, so everything that is transparent is going to be see-through. You can look down at the image below it. Because the whole image is transparent, the whole layer is transparent, nothing's changed in our image. But let's say that we drew something. Let's say that we drew something with a bright red so that you can really see it here. We draw over the top of this. Now it looks like we're messing up what we have, right? But the thing is, that's only on this new layer that we have here. So if we click off the visibility of that, we can see that we haven't really changed our image at all because this is only isolated to this element. What we've painted here is only on that one layer. Now, if we hit the eraser tool over this, you'll see how it just erases to a transparency rather than using that secondary color that I was talking about before. And that is because we are on a new layer. So think of it like an eraser on that layer, which creates the ability to do, well, you can make a lot of mistakes if you do this, for instance. So for example, let's say that you wanted to add in details, around the outside of something. And this isn't, I'm not drawing anything particular. This is just to showcase how you could use this. So even using white, by the way, which white is an opaque color. So you could carve or cut or create shapes or even use this to create masks that could be selections all on this one layer. And again, that is on one layer. So we're able to move it or manipulate it without disrupting or disturbing the layer below. Now, when a layer is set to normal, that's how it's going to behave. But there are other layer effects that you can use. But the two that I will use the most is darken, which essentially only allows darker elements to be visible. So for instance, if I use this color over this, it's going to show. But if I use white, it won't show at all because it's darkening it. And white is lighter than what is beneath. So if you wanted to, for instance, just have this be the darkest element of your drawing, you could use a darken layer and then paint over your lighter elements. The lighten layer effect does the opposite. So if you remember, I had a lot of white that I had painted in, and because it's on a lighten layer, anything that's lighter than the color beneath it will be visible. If it's darker than the color beneath it, it will not be visible. Another layer type that I use, or layer effect, is the multiply. And multiply is nice because it will sometimes allow you to create shadows. A lot of times I'll just do like a 50% gray to add shadows. And that is pretty much the equivalent of just adding black to a color if you were mixing it in acrylic or oil. Multiply will multiply your colors together. All right, so you may be wondering, well, I've got these gradations, but it feels like hard-edged and chunky. You see, this is like, it's not a smooth transition, right? And so there are some other tools that you can use to make it smoother. Probably you might want to, your first impulse would be to go to this blur tool, but you'll notice that the blur tool just doesn't really do much blurring at all. It's very minuscule. It's only for subtleties and backgrounds. I barely ever use that. Your second option is to go to the smudge tool here, and this is going to have a little bit more of a blending going on. You can change your brush. Remember I was talking earlier about how you can use different brush tips to get different shapes. And you'll want to find one that's got a lot of noise, though, with the smudge tool. I like to use this one personally, but this is one of my own personal ones. Usually it's one with a lot of space. You may want to explore which brushes are going to get you the kind of texturing and material that you like. There is also, in the last couple of years, they added the mixer brush, which is this one here. It looks like it's a brush with a little bit of a water kind of a stain looking thing. And this one does just a heck of a job blending colors. Let me pick a brush that I think will work pretty well. I like this one with the mixer brush because it's got a little bit of a chalk texture to it. and then you'll color dab, and this creates like a nice grainy kind of a color blend. So if you want to get a much more natural kind of an oily brush texture or paper texture, this is a good way to get that. So there you go. So that's a nice way to get a little bit more organic with your brushes, but I don't want to go too much more complicated than that, other than to say there's a lot you can do with this, and you can get some very natural looking brushes using Photoshop, using this combination of some of these tools that I've just shown you. Another technique that a lot of artists that I know use is the selection and fill or airbrush tool. So up here, you'll find this little icon right here, and this is a lasso tool. Now you can use the polygonal lasso tool or the lasso tool. The difference is this. So with the lasso tool, you can do rounded corners and shapes and things like this. And you can hold down the shift key to add even more to it, for instance, and draw in multiple shapes. And then if you use the airbrush, let's create a new layer real quick, and then use the airbrush, you can do you can see how you could create some really neat airbrush selections using that. And this is very handy if you're filling in large spaces. Because I did it on another layer, remember, you could move it around, for instance. And the polygonal lasso tool works the same way, except that when you click, it creates a straight line. And then the second time you click, it creates a corner. So this is really useful for creating geometry, or I'll give you an example here. Like, let's say you were going to draw in a box. You know, you can make it look like a very convincing box by using the polygonal lasso tool to create perception of depth. There we go. Let's choose a yellow for that side, and then for the top, we'll do something that's like a lighter yellow. Watch how this works. So this is really cool for creating the illusion of geometry. There we go. Look at that. Pretty neat. If you wanted to select one of those faces, for instance, say you already laid it down, you can't go back to reselect it, right? So you could go here to this selection tool. This is the Magic Wand tool, a classic. This has been around a long time. And what that does is it selects the solid body of a surface. So for instance, here, it has to be on the layer that's selected. So if we go to that layer below and we select here, you'll notice, look, it's only grabbing colors that are that similar. They're connecting. They're one sort of an object, I guess, in a sense. The way it's seeing it is because the pixels right next to the pixel is the same color. So it grabs that. And like here, if we click this one, it'll just grab all the dark ones here, you know. And now that's your selection. So if we go back to our layer above it where we had done that polygonal lasso, and then we select this face, for instance, we could even go in here and add in a little bit of airbrush to that selected face. And you can begin to see how you could even just do entire drawings just using the selection tool with an airbrush. And I know some artists that do their entire paintings with just selection tools and airbrushes and just a little bit of that mixer tool that I had shown you earlier. There's some other key things that you're going to need to know if you're going to draw with Photoshop, one of which is the transform tool and how to use the transform. So what I'll do is I'll use this selection tool. I'll make a selection. I hit Command C, which will copy it. Command V will paste it, right? Once it's pasted, you'll notice it pasted onto a new layer. So that's on its own layer right there. Now if you hit Command T, you can do the transform. Transform allows you to rotate it, skew it. If you hold down the Shift key, you can squeeze it. And if you hold down the Command key and grab a corner, you can even do one of these things to squeeze some of your objects into a perspective, for instance. So I use this a lot, for instance, if I've got to like resize a character's eye or just resize a part of something. You know, if you had like an element here and you're like, maybe I want to make this part, you know, a little bit longer, you know, then you could do something like this and maybe do a distortion like that. And then you could just go in and like clean up while it's on its new layer. So that's a technique that I use an awful lot. And you're going to see me do that a lot in the drawing that I'm about to do. All right, let's hit it with the time lapse. All right, how does all this stuff come together? All right, you're going to see me drawing on the bottom layer here, and it's basically just doing the sketching. You know, the digital tool isn't going to do the drawing for you. You're still going to have to learn how to draw, okay? The digital tools are just there to make it easier for you, all right? This is a bit of a common misconception. A lot of people think that digital means it draws it for you. No, man, you still got to learn how to draw. You still got to learn your basic fundamentals, how to create perspective and how to create depth and how to create clustering of your details and clustering of your shadows and all that stuff. You're going to need to learn how to turn forms. You're going to need to learn your fundamentals. The drawing tools, they don't do it for you. Just getting my brushes isn't going to make you draw like me. You're still going to have to understand how to turn forms and how to design and how to control the viewer's eye. And that's why I made all my other tutorials. If you're getting into drawing, you know, you can check out my easy art lessons if you're really early on, if you are a beginner. You can learn to draw pretty cool stuff in just a matter of a weekend, you know, and then it's just a matter of practicing and getting comfortable with using the tools to get the results that you want. So hopefully this video is going to help you along in that regard. My advice is to not compare yourself to other artists. Don't compare what you're doing to what I'm doing. Don't try to draw the exact same thing. Try to draw your own face of a character using the tools that you just learned. To do this drawing, I just used 2 layer types, normal and darken. I didn't even use a multiply layer. And then I used my watercolor brush, which is a lot of what you're seeing here. And you can get that in my brush pack. And then I also used my spatter brush, which is just like a toothbrushy kind of a spatter. It simulates like if you were to just spray, you know, white paint across your image. And you could see it in the image to get that texture. How I'm getting that texture is mostly with the brushes. So you're going to want to explore your own brushes. You're going to want to explore other people's brushes. A lot of artists post their brushes and they make them available online if you want to get a specific artist's look or feel. But make no mistake, just using somebody else's brushes won't make you draw like them. It'll help you to get a certain look or effect, but you'll still need to learn how to draw. This character is the ancient Tenza who appears in the Twilight Monk series of novels and art books that I work on. If you want to learn how to draw, if you want to learn how to turn forms and actually create cool looking buildings and characters, like what you're seeing me draw and like what I draw here on my channel, well, guess what, man? I've created a series of easy art lessons, and these are super simple, broken down, real-time videos teaching you how to draw. You can draw within a weekend. And of course, I also have a lot of other art tips here on my YouTube channel, so don't forget to subscribe. And dudes, I am here every Wednesday and sometimes more, so I will see you then. Ciao, baby. Oh, yeah.